Only in America, right? I taught school for 9 years, and I worked for the city of Green Bay for 20. And some people would claim in my 14th year in the state senate, I am still throwing garbage. Those are the people that don't like me, but that's okay. First of all, I wanted to mention that last week I met with Senator Feingold, and he's all but ready to announce that he is running for the United States Senate. I got a note from him thanking me for endorsing him. I talked to my son-in-law, however, and he's mad at us for not running for governor. Yeah. And I did make that request, but we can't hold that against him. He can make a difference in Washington as well. Also to note, April 7th, is an election. I had an opportunity to talk to one of Justice Bradley's staffers, and appreciate if you would vote for her on Tuesday, April 7th. And vote no on that referendum question that'll take away power from Shirley Abramson, who's done absolutely a great job, nationally recognized. And before I do my comments, I wanted to mention just a couple things. We were at a public hearing this week in Green Bay, and the person asked about workers' comp changes, and they're going to restrict the administrative law judges. They're going to take away workers' comp from the Department of Workforce Development and give it to the Commissioner on Insurance. So you can understand that one. That's a program that we're very proud of, the first one in the country to do workers' comp, no longer workman's comp, but workers' comp. And we're also the first state in the union to do unemployment comp, and one of the first states to do collective bargaining for public employees. The other thing that's happening, and it's kind of unique, I talked to a couple of union people, and Robin Voss is telling them he's going to amend the prevailing wage law, and if we fight it as Democrats, he'll get rid of it altogether. So that's the threat out there. And they're also going to target project labor agreements, which allows non-union contractors from, wrecking or working publicly funded projects and doing it for less. So those are some of the things that may or may not be in the budget. They're in a hurry to get it done. We were in once in March, we'll be in once in April, and we'll be in once in May, and in between there we'll be doing the budget and put on a good fight. But interesting time. Do participate in the process, consider running, and understand those spring elections are so very important. Those develop our farm systems going forward. In Brown County, I think we have 3 progressives out of 26. It makes me wonder how I am there and how Eric Genrich is there, but we're fighting a good fight for all of you, and we'll continue to do that. But good morning. It's great to see all of you again and be here. It's a very difficult time, not just for organized labor, but totally for our state. The latest best data put out by our own Department of Workforce Development shows that while Governor Walker is in Arizona, South Carolina, North Carolina, New Hampshire, wherever, and while he's doing that, on our dime, campaign for president, we have fallen to 40th in the nation for job creation. 40th. Not acceptable at all. So we're among the 10 worst states in creating jobs, and job creation is barely half of what the national rate is, and only Iowa is doing worse among our neighbors. When he first took office, Governor Walker, the Republican, said we needed to cut taxes on business and free them from regulation to get the economy going. 250,000 jobs, he may be at about 45% of that, so that's been an epic failure. And despite cutting $2.3 billion in taxes for corporations and the rich, our economy is still faltered. After hundreds of millions in tax cuts, which most of the money went to the rich, we're still well short, as I mentioned, of that 250,000 jobs that Governor Walker and the Republicans promised. They said we needed to eliminate the ability of public workers to work together to negotiate for decent pay and safer working conditions, and that would eliminate our state's deficit. Wrong again. That's about 320,000 workers today making less money, and I'm one of them, by paying more for health insurance and paying for half of our pension and basically not getting a raise in forever. But that's the nature of it. I think really, if you look at our economy, one of the reasons you take that money out of the hands of 320,000 people, something like $300 million a year, it has an effect, and it's not a positive effect. They said our public schools were too well funded and cut public education by over $1.6 billion. the budget cuts to our children's education, largest cuts in our children's education in state's history. And I think we led the country in cuts for public education. And despite the sacrifice demanded of working families, of hard-working families, 4 years later, we have a $2.2 billion deficit for which the Republicans have only themselves to blame. They cannot blame Governor Doyle anymore. It is their problem. They have put us in the hole that we are in. They should just look in the mirror to find out who is responsible. There were senators out there, Senators Coles and Ellis, that said they didn't agree with these tax cuts, that it was going to put us in a hole. Boy, were they right. But did they have the courage to take that strong vote against these things? No, they did not. They're all concerned about that next election when they might be primary, like what they did with my colleague and friend, Senator Schultz, who stood up for the working men and women and stood up against the mine that was going to destroy our environment. And what he got for that, basically removed. So they blame their failure to create jobs on the protest. It was our fault. Too much rain one spring. You know, rainy springs. We haven't had that yet. The fighting in Syria. Or we are. The terrorists, you know. And now they're saying the 8% who belong to private sector unions are holding us back. It can't be that the governor and Republicans are to blame. That their policies of taking our hard-earned money and giving it to their wealthy corporate friends in the hope that they might give some of us back are the reasons why we're failing. It must be us. Trickle down has never worked. It never worked and never will. Somehow we figure out a way to bring it up from the bottom. And they don't believe in that. They want to cut the poor and the middle income. Never mind that since 2000, it's an interesting statistic, the percent of our population that is considered in the middle class has fallen from 55% to just under 49%. And median income, when adjusted for inflation, has fallen, again adjusted from inflation, from $60,000 in 2000 to just over $51,000 in 2013. In real dollars, that's a loss of $9,000 since 2000. And every day, Wisconsinites have not sacrificed enough, according to Republicans, so we're asked to sacrifice even more. And I'm very disappointed in some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that said right to work was not going to happen. And I think the governor said it was a distraction, didn't want it on his desk. Well, the lies keep coming. But the right to work was supposed to be the latest scheme to get our economy back on track. But how many more jobs will be created when Wisconsin families, whether they are union or non-union, see their incomes fall another $5,000 per year? If you look at right to work in those states, less $5,000, less health care, less pension, less safety in the workplace, more infant mortality in those states. And this all started down south, and now it's come to Wisconsin and Indiana and Michigan as well. But it is a step backwards. And my good friend Senator Cole said it wouldn't happen, but it did, and he voted the wrong way. Very disappointing. Senior Care, the best prescription drug plan, is being eliminated to save the pharmaceutical companies $44 million. We had that hearing this week, and we had all those people talking about IRIS, where you can stay in your home, you can get a caregiver to help you stay in a home. He's going to eliminate that. So these thousands of seniors and people with disabilities living their lives in their own homes and communities, that program is going to be eliminated. Family care, which is just coming to northeast Wisconsin, is being eliminated as we know it in favor of a statewide program that will be run by an out-of-state insurance company. And our Aging and Disability Resource Center will be privatized. The whole goal to privatize everything. That is the Koch brother mantra and the Republican mantra today. Our UW campuses are facing nearly $360 million in cuts. $360 million. After they did the figures and looked at the total budget, the $300 million figure did include some of the outliers, another $60 million in cuts. So $360 million, including $8 million to UWGB. And people in the state aren't aware of it, and I met with the new chancellor, that our universities are funded at less than 20% state funding. So they're a private institution, they do, and Ray Cross says he will retire or resign if they don't cut the cuts back. And I don't know if they'll probably throw a crumb. Maybe they'll cut it from 360 down to something else. But they're not doing us any favors. GB, Green Bay, and others will be funded at 15%. And they're supposed to establish an authority, but that's another argument. The same day they talked about that $300 million cut, or $360 million cut to the university system, they announced they were going to do $220 million in bonding for the Milwaukee Bucks arena for several billionaires, some of the richest people in the world. And they said, well, the Republicans are saying, well, we're going to make that bonding less, whatever. It could cost as much as $400 million plus after principal and interest. At the same time, you're destroying the university system and doing all you can to hurt the workers of this state. Our public schools are again being asked to cut another $127 million. The Green Bay schools cut of $3 million, and all the other ones will be cut severely. And some of the rural schools, they have no fluff. They have nothing extra. They have no reserve, and they're going to be cut as well. So they do that. They cut the public schools, and they give millions and millionaires who already send their kids to private schools, private school vouchers. So we know that trickle-down economics doesn't work. We don't have to look any further than look at Kansas and what's happened there and to see where they're taking us. The way we build our economy is to make sure that everyone in this state has a good job with good pay. Every child a good, affordable education, and that they have financial security when they retire. That means supporting increasing the minimum wage and restoring our tough equal pay law. One of the greatest achievements in my career was getting the equal pay bill passed, signed by Governor Doyle, where you could go to a local court, a circuit court, a county court, rather than having to go to federal court to win a claim of discrimination. If you're a female, or if you're a senior, or if you're a minority, you have some right to win in court. You very seldom win in federal court. They had argued there's already a plan. So we lose the majority, and Senator Grothman, now Congressman Grothman, took it upon himself to eliminate my law. And he said it was clogging the courts up with cases. There hadn't been one heard yet. He lied. It also means reinvesting in our public schools to fulfill our obligation under the Constitution to make sure each child has the opportunity to learn. And I have two daughters that are school teachers. My second daughter is 40 years old, and she is a second-year teacher in Southern Door in Door County. And my other daughter has had a reprieve for 3 years after teaching for 8 years because her husband is now a full-fledged doctor, and she gets to stay home with the kids. So if you want to go to school, get an education, marry a doctor. It's worked well. So it means more state investment in our UW schools so students and their families don't have to borrow so much. It also means making sure that those who do borrow to further themselves can refinance their student loans like you can do for a home, a car, or a business loan. Sadly, in the 90s, the federal government said, because there is default, we're going to make the students lock in their interest rates. So I have a niece that owes $200,000. She'll get it paid off because she's working. She's an optometrist at 8% interest. 8% in this interest environment is insanity. She should be able to refinance at 3 or 4%. So our higher ed, lower debt, we call it that held bill, should be implemented. That should be bipartisan. You think the Republicans would agree to allow these students to put that kind of money back in the economy? Of course, the federal government makes something like $60 billion on the backs of students every year on federal loans, and the private loans are in excess of sometimes 10, 12, 13%, especially at some of the private colleges. So my health bill should pass. There should be universal support for that. I have a broker for a little bit of money that we do have. He's got 3 daughters in the university system, very Republican. He said, why wouldn't everybody agree to allow the kids to do what you can do with a home or a car, refinance a heavy interest loan? But it also means investing in our economy by supporting local businesses rather than allowing our tax dollars to be used to corporations to send our jobs overseas to countries that have no work safety laws, no living wages, and no environmental protections. We have another bill that we're trying to bring forward. It would mean raising the income cap that determines who can earn overtime from $23,000 to $69,000 a year. It's been $23,000 since 1975. Something like, what, 40 years. Where you cannot get overtime if you're in management. So you get a job at Shopko as a manager, you put in 80 hours, no overtime. $23,000 is the limit. We would have it raised by inflationary adjustment to $69,000 a year, so many of the salaried employees can start earning more while being able to spend more time with their families. It also means giving middle-class families a real tax cut by finally making the rich and corporations pay their fair share. And it means making it possible for people to save their own retirement by investing in a state-run pension fund. We would like to allow private sector folks in real estate, farmers, small business to buy into the state pension plan. Totally separate by law, but managed by the ETF and the State Wisconsin Investment Board. Low cost, good return, and we'd establish for them just to give them another alternative. Not mandatory, but just you choose to pick that as your fund, and we think that's got possibilities too. I think we have something like 1.5 million people in this state with no pension plan at all. And most of the companies, they are cutting their corporate pension plans. So this is an opportunity we'd like to have it happen too. Again, it's a democratic idea, concept, and I don't know if they'll go there, but I think it makes sense. And last, certainly not least, it means reforming our elections. We're again able to decide the priorities of our government rather than being told what they are by corporations and the wealthy, the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelstein, or whomever. Citizens United is destroying our political process. The nonpartisan Supreme Court is anything but nonpartisan at the national level and at the state level. And that's sad. That money is buying these elections. And they should have to, when they're making decisions on Governor Walker and John Doe or whatever, they should have to recuse themselves because they've taken way too much money to get themselves elected. And no one on either side should have that much influence over our lives. We can make this a better place where success is achieved through education, hard work, and playing by the rules. We know what works because for the better part of our lives, we've lived it. After all, we are the progressive state of Wisconsin. We are not, and we do not want to be, Mississippi. And I know that for a lot of us, it's not where we want our state to be right now, and many of us are scared that things will not get any better, but I'm not one of those people. I believe in the better nature, our desire for fairness and for prosperity for all. In that regard, Walker's numbers now are flipped. 43% positive, 52% negative in Wisconsin. I wish that poll would have come out last October, but it didn't. But the reality is he's hurting real people, and they're finally getting it. It's just so sad in those midterm elections that people don't get out and vote for their economic interests rather than other things. So I believe in our better nature, as I said, and despite what lies immediately in front of us, I see a better future just over the horizon. Because I cannot believe people will continue to allow our progressive tradition, forged by both Republican and Democrats over the last century, to be dismantled to provide fodder for one man's presidential ambition. And I have to compare us to Minnesota. Packers are much better than Vikings, but Governor Dayton's doing a hell of a lot better job than Governor Walker. No question. And he is a billionaire, but he has got the right idea in mind. Wisconsin's governor, as I mentioned, gave the rich $2.1 billion in tax cuts and cut school funding more than any other state. Third worst job growth in the Midwest, $283 million budget deficit this year, median income of $800 lower than the national average. That's Wisconsin. Minnesota, Governor Dayton raised taxes on the rich by $2.1 billion and invested $900 million in schools. Second highest job growth in the Midwest. $2 billion budget surplus. A median income $8,000 higher than the national average. And the highest economic confidence in all of the country. That's Governor Dayton. That's Minnesota. As I mentioned before, 11 wages were cut by 320,000 public sector employees. The right to work will cut wages for another 180,000. So that's 500,000 working Wisconsinites making less money. And we have the nation's worst black unemployment and child poverty rate. We have the nation's worst middle class decline that I mentioned, and just 10 states have a worse record on personal bankruptcy. We are headed in the wrong direction, but unified we can make it. We must make it. Participate in the process, get involved in local government, vote April 7th, and then 2016 come out ready to win a presidency for the Democrats and Russ Feingold, and for us in the state Senate to take it back. But with your help, we can do it. It's always great to be with you. Friend to labor forever. And I would like to say to you all, in solidarity. Yeah.